Wow, is it hot or what?
What's up guys, my name is Double Z and today I'm going to be coding Two Cars, which is a Google Play Store game. You might have played it before, but if you haven't, you can see the gameplay on the screen right now. It's a pretty simple game. You control these two cars and move them left or right to collect all the circles and avoid all the squares. Of course, as time passes by, the obstacles move faster, the game gets harder, and it really tests your reflexes. But anyway, today I'm gonna try and code it in Visual Basic. Well, I'm gonna do a voiceover, because the footage you're seeing in the background is pre-recorded. Now, I know that not all people watching this video are going to be interested in the programming parts, and they just want to see the gameplay and the way that the game turned out. I'm gonna leave a annotation on the screen so you can skip to that part of the video and so that you don't have to watch the whole thing. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. As you can probably imagine, I've done some preparation for this video. As you can see, I already have all the resources needed for this project. I did most of these images in Photoshop. The background, the cars, the remake by Double D banner, the buttons, and so on. As you can see, I split the code in two parts, configuring the buttons and the actual code. So what I like to do when I'm working on a big Visual Basic project like this is I like to make my own buttons. Using the default Visual Basic button just isn't, I don't know, I don't like the aesthetics of it. So I just like to make my own custom one in Photoshop and program it to, whenever you hover over it, another picture shows up. And when you click on it, another picture shows up so that it looks like a real button. So that's what I'm doing right here for each of these menu buttons. Here I made the separate private sub and called it Let the Game Begin. I like to make a private sub, which is basically a function, because I'm gonna need it multiple times, so why not put it in one place and just say Let the Game Begin whenever I need it? I mean, that's what functions are for, right? So here's what the game looks like right now. These look like real buttons, right? Anyway, let's start writing some actual codes. We're gonna need a lot of timers in this game, but the first one is car starts, which is going to be a little animation of both cars starting up. And I also found this like car gas GIF on the internet. So I'm gonna put that behind the cars so it looks like they're actually moving. So here's how that looks. Not that great right now because it's really laggy, but I will fix that later, as you'll be able to see. The next part, which is, if you ask me, the most interesting part about programming this game, is the random pattern of circles and squares coming down towards the cars. So for each of the obstacles, we're gonna need a random variable. As you can see here, circle or rectangle, and there are 4 of them, and for each of them there's an integer part which is gonna give us a random number. And if that number is even, then the obstacle will be a circle, and if it's odd, it's gonna be a rectangle, or rather a square. I know this is kind of a complicated setup, but I don't know, that's just how I like to do things sometimes. Again, here I'm creating a private sub or a function, whatever you want to call it, for each of the obstacles. And also a private sub for randomizing all of them. The next timer we're gonna need is the one that's going to move the obstacles. This is probably the most important part of the code, and I would also say it's the hardest. For now, I'm just setting it up so that the obstacles move downwards so that I can see if the randomizing part works. I've also set up a timer for time, which I need because I need to increase the speed of the obstacles every 15 seconds. Here's how the game looks so far. It's really laggy right now, but I did fix that in about 20 minutes.
20 minutes later.
I've done some research and found this code that actually really helps with moving picture boxes. So now I'm making another timer for the obstacles because I don't want them to move at the same time. I want them to be spread out and truly random. That's why I need another random variable that's going to determine the delay between the first and the second obstacle timer. I think I ended up with another solution for this problem later, but you get the point. Here I'm checking if the obstacle made it to the bottom of the form. I had to type like 20 different location points because I actually tested this, and when the obstacle speed increases, the obstacle moves 5 or more pixels in one period of time. And what happens then is that it passes the location I first typed in. So that's the reason I had to type in multiple locations so that I cover all the ground below the form. I'm not sure if you understand what I mean, but yeah. Here I made another private sub for when I hit one of the obstacles and I called it game over. And here, when the obstacle actually gets to the bottom of the form, I need to check a couple of things. First, I need to check if it's visible, because if it's not, then you know it's a circle and I already collected it earlier. But I also need to check if it's a circle or a square, because if it's a circle, it's game over, because I missed a circle. So there are a lot of these simple little things you have to check. I also check if the car picture box intersects with the obstacle picture box. That's like the whole idea of the game, right? And when they do intersect, I need to check if the music is enabled, and if it is, I need to play the collect sound. So as I said earlier, there are lots of these conditions you have to check in this part of the code. In this part, now that I've finished the obstacle timer, I need to replicate it for obstacle 2 timer. And the way I did that is with a quick find and replace tool in Visual Basic, so that I don't have to change the numbers manually, which is pretty neat. The next timer is the car move timer, which is going to let us move the car left or right. When it reaches a certain position, it changes the car left's boolean to true or false, depending on which side the car is located. I also need a car change timer, which is basically the opposite of the car move timer. For example, if you decide to move the car left, but then you immediately change your decision, you don't have to wait for the whole animation, you just have to run the car change timer, and it returns the car back to its original position. Here I made all the additional dialogues, although I didn't work on them right away. There's the high scores dialogue, there's the one where you enter your name, the information dialogue, and the one where you get to rate this game, which I thought it would be pretty cool to do. Here's the code for displaying your score and time in the game over function. The t shouldn't be an integer, that's a mistake here, it should be a string, but I think I will fix it in a second here. And the code for making the label be in the horizontal center of the form, which was something new I learned while working on this project. Here I tested it out and it didn't work because of the T I was talking about earlier. There we go. And there's how it looks. I just need to make sure to bring the label to front when it's displayed. Now I'm making the menu for when game over happens. It's going to be similar to the one in the main menu, but the buttons are going to be replay, high scores, home, and rate game, which I will add later on. This part of the video is going to be super fast because the parts where you configure the buttons is pretty boring, and I also showed it in the beginning. And now to test out this menu, as you can see the replay button works, and at this point I got carried away playing the game and trying to beat my high score. But yeah, as you can see, the game is now starting to look like something you would play, right? That was the end of coding the main form. Now to move on to the dialogues. The first one is going to be the rate this game dialogue, and again, I'm not going to focus on setting up the interface because it's really simple, putting up picture boxes, labels, and so on. Here I'm putting these 5 picture boxes, which are going to be stars, which is going to be a way to rate the game, but I'm also going to put a text box below so that you can write a comment if you want to. And all of this is going to be sent to me via email, which I will code later. But yeah, this part of the game is optional and just something I wanted to do. So here's the interesting part of coding for this dialogue, the email sending. At the top of the codes, I'm gonna have to put imports.net.mail, and when I click OK, there's gonna be a message box that says thank you for submitting your feedback, it is much appreciated. And then I'm gonna make a new SMTP client and a new mail message. I'm gonna set up my credentials, which are going to be blurred here because this is actually my personal email and password. So every time someone rates this program, I'm actually gonna be sending an email to myself, which is actually kind of funny, but it's whatever. What's important is that I get the message. So here I'm setting up the port number, the host, the from and to mail address, and email subject, body, and so on. And if the email doesn't go through, or if there's an error while trying to send it, another message box will show up and tell you that there was an error, which will actually happen when I try this out the first time, but that's because I haven't yet enabled receiving emails from third-party programs like this one. But I went back to it and fixed it. Now it works, and if you want, you can check it out. There's a link in the description. Anyway, moving on to the next dialogue, which is the enter your name dialogue. After I set up the interface, which is quite simple, just a label, a text box, and an OK button, I needed to somehow connect this dialogue with the main form. And as you could have seen by now, I did this in a complicated way as well. I made a checkbox in the main form which wasn't visible, and whenever a name was entered in the dialogue, the checkbox would change its name to the entered name, and it would also be checked. So whenever it changed its check state, the let the game begin function would occur. Now tell me that's not a complicated setup. The next dialogue, and the most complicated one, is the high scores one. I had to change it a couple of times and update it because I just couldn't get the high scores setting to work properly. I originally wanted to save top 5 high scores ever played on this game, but then I found that pretty complicated and didn't want to make any databases and stuff like that for this game. So I just went for the safer option and made the last 5 high scores, which was simple to code. I also made a new high score label in the main form so that it will show up anytime someone beats the current high score. So here I am testing this out, and as you can see, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. There's a lot of going on in the game over screen, and it's overlapping, which is not good. I also made a clear button in the high score dialog if you wanted to delete all the high scores and start over. And the last dialog was the information dialog, which is going to give you instructions on how to play the game, what are the controls, and just some general information about the game and the reason I made it, in case someone found it outside of this YouTube video. Even here I wrote to avoid the rectangles, knowing that those are squares and not rectangles. Anyway, the original thought with these red letters A and J was that I wanted to make it possible for you to change those letters to whatever key on the keyboard, because maybe someone feels more comfortable pressing another key. But again, that turned out too complicated for me, so I just left it as is. I also made a little Easter egg, if you can call it that, so that when you click these little circles and squares in the information dialog, it makes a sound that it actually makes in the game. I don't know, I just found it kind of funny and wanted to do it. Finally, I put the donate button and the OK button at the end of this dialog. I will talk about the donate button at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. And finally, I made the settings button in the main menu, where you'll be able to change the difficulty level to easy, medium or hard. And you'll also be able to see the rate this game dialog, because originally you weren't able to. There isn't going to be a settings dialog, it's just going to be a simple context menu strip that shows up when you right or left click the settings button. I actually couldn't figure out how to make the context menu show up when you left click the button. I had to look it up, but then again, that's also something new I learned from this project. I also had to do some testing with the difficulty levels, because a lot of the times the obstacles were too close to each other and there was just nothing I could do to avoid them. So I had to change the obstacle speed multiple times. And the game is done. It's time to showcase all of its features and dialogues. I think I made it pretty similar to the original game, and I also added a few features on my own. But let's check it out. As you can see, the buttons are custom made. Here you can see the last 5 high scores. You can clear them if you want, which I will do right now. You can turn the music on and off. Here you can see the instructions on how to play the game. You can see the controls and some general information about the game. You can also go to my itch.io page by clicking on the donate button, which I will show you after this. You can change the difficulty and the speed to easy, medium or hard, and you can rate this game if you want with 1 to 5 stars, and you can also leave a comment, which will be delivered to me via email, as you can see right here. There it is. But let's play the actual game. Enter my name here, and off we go. Again, if you're not familiar with the game, it's pretty simple. You're supposed to avoid the squares and collect all the circles. But of course, over time, the obstacles gain speed, the game gets harder, and it really challenges your ability to split your left and right hands. I'm not sure if the video is lagging a bit here, but in the game it isn't. I managed to fix the lagging from before. As you can imagine, I spent a lot of time on this game, so it wouldn't be cool if I wasn't good at playing it. So let's set the difficulty to hard and let's give it a try.
Twenty minutes later.
There we go, my new high score is 108. If you want to play the game yourself, the download link will be in the description, so you can check it out and leave me your high score in the comments. Now I want to show you this page I have. Here's the link, but it will also be in the description, so don't worry about it. Here you can download the game for free, but if you want to support me as a developer, you can donate whatever amount you think is appropriate. And of course, you can see some information and screenshots from the game. If you click here and click on no thanks, it will take you straight to the downloads page. But as I said, if you want, you can donate a few dollars to support me as a developer. And if you do decide to do that, thank you in advance. Anyway, I recently found out about this platform called itch.io, which made this possible. It's a pretty cool website where you can find indie games and indie developers and follow their work. Anyway, this is going to be the end of this video. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. If you like this game, make sure to let me know by hitting the like button. Also, you can probably imagine that it took me a long time to put this all together and make this video, so please, if you have any feedback, make sure to leave it in the comments. One more thing, for those of you who want to see the Visual Basic project, the download link will also be in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Peace!